The death of the third place has almost completely uprooted society. Let me explain here. If you don't understand what the concept of the third place is, I'll explain it very simply. If you think about the places you are during a given day, let's say you work a typical job where you have to go into work. Well, there's a number of places that you are during a given day. One would be your home, right, where you stay unless you work from home, but I'm talking about most typical people. Your home, and then you go to wherever your job is. The second place would be your workplace. But the third place, which was typically where people socialized and met, and typically where people would meet potential boyfriends, girlfriends, and find people to get married, that was what the third place was. And traditionally in society, there's been an abundance of third places. And all throughout society, it's changed forms. So they haven't stayed consistently the same. But places like churches, for example, places of commerce like diners, restaurants, things like that. Recently, maybe in the 20th, 21st century, places like bookstores. Bars is another popular one, of course, which I don't really choose to participate in, but it is a third place after all. Community centers, town areas, sporting events. These are all examples of what third places are. But slowly over time, since the big flu has hit us 4 years ago, we've slowly seen the death of the third place. And this just takes life, takes what we experience in life, and just makes it that much worse, because there's more to life than just getting up, going to the job, and then going back home, or staying in one place if you work remotely, for example. There needs to be other places that aren't the workplace, that aren't your house, where people can gather, they can talk, they can meet each other, they can socialize. And without that, there's a major disruption that occurs in the societal flow and how things are happening. And if you don't agree with this, I think it's pretty self-evident this is happening. The amount of socializing is down massively, especially under younger generations. The birth rate in the West, specifically, let's talk about the United States. United States, I think, is 1.7. That means we're below population replacement. 2.1 is often considered to be population replacement in a given country. It's at 1.7. So there's less people having children. It's very likely that there's less people getting married, which is what the statistics are showing. And the people who are married are having less children as a whole. But forget about that for a second. There's less people who are getting married as a whole. Why? Because they're not meeting, right? They're not finding ways to meet each other. They're not getting connected. And there's a whole array of issues that we can talk about with the dating in the West, but I'm just going to keep it real simple here. So why do you think that dating apps have been on the rise? Because people are trying to find a quote-unquote third place to meet each other, because the real life one doesn't really exist. If we look at what pop culture pushes on us, it's bars is the third place. And for an increasing amount of people, bars is not really the best place, not the best environment for people. They don't really like the environment that's around it. They don't really like the vibe and the atmosphere. I'm not a big bar person, for example. And so if you're not into that, if you're not into the quote unquote more partying, bar drinking scene, where are you going to go meet people, right? Maybe you can meet people at your local church. Well, youth church attendance has been declining, although slightly upticking now among specifically Generation Z men. But how are you going to help people get married if Gen Z women aren't attending church and young people overall aren't attending these churches? They're not really going to meet there at the rates that they were before. People are getting married later and later in life now. So they're not really even meeting their spouses necessarily in high school, like typically happened, I would say, 80 years ago, or in college, which probably was the norm 40 to 50 years ago. Now people, when they graduate college, which is a unique time where there's a lot less third places to meet people. You're not really involved in social circles to the same degree. You're often occupied with work, stress, moving out, things like that, paying your own bills. So it's much more difficult to find this third place to meet other people and socialize. So what do you do? What is the solution? Well, the third places are dying. Like bookstores are closing massively. Brick and mortar stores that aren't owned by a gigantic multi-billion-dollar corporation are closing because people aren't meeting in these places. People don't really know what to do because socializing was so disincentivized for such a long time. that it's been tough for people to get back into that habit of going out and socializing again, meeting people in certain places. And with so much being digital, you can quote unquote find people to date online, you can play video games online, you can talk to people online, you can socialize to an extent online. Video games is another massive time drain that can be done online or from the comfort of your living room. With so many of these activities now being relegated to being online as opposed to in person, that just makes the pool of people willing to go out and do these things much less. Also, economic conditions can contribute to this. It's very expensive to live as a young person in America or in the West. Money doesn't grow on trees. So going out and doing things like getting coffee, buying a book, going out to places to eat, or just doing, experiences together, there are low cost experiences that you can invest in, but it's going to be a deterrent for some people, is going to contribute to part of the problem. And more our society, for some reason, has moved towards people living on their own in apartments, or maybe they have roommates, but typically when you leave college, and they've shown statistics on this, where American parents are the least tolerant of their kids living at home after college, which, if I'm being honest, is an amazing decision for finances. But, some people want to live on their own, and that's totally fine. But if you're on your own, isolated from your community of people, and that's your existence now, then it's just going to be much more difficult for you to bump into people, for you to meet people in social places. And it becomes very easy for people to comfortably fall into this box of, I'm just going to do everything online, digitally. I'm never going to go out and meet people and talk to people. And that's incredibly damaging for people's psyches, because they don't feel like it can change. They don't feel like that there's any way out of this, and that this is just existence now. And I would encourage people to fight against that, fight against what I would argue the ads and corporations want us to do. For example, I saw an Amazon commercial, and it was basically showed the epitome of someone's weekend just staying at home, shopping at Amazon, and putting plants around their apartment. And that was fulfilling for some reason. And this is what the companies push. They want you to stay at home, buy their crap, and be happy with it. And you have to push back and say no to that. And you have to go, and you know what? That's not a fulfilling existence. That's not what we want. We don't want to be a part of this rat race. And we're going to do something different. And we're going to go out and we're going to do things in person. And if you're one of those people, excellent. And encourage people who are, maybe your friends or people who are not into that, to go out and enjoy life and try new experiences. Because it's so easy to get trapped in your own box in this sort of digital world, easier than ever. And people with those tendencies now have an excuse to do so. But we need to fight that if we want to build a culture and a society that isn't going to be on the decline, both socially and population-wise. That's just reality of how numbers work. So anyways, let me know your thoughts on this. Thank you so much for watching this video. And anyways, it's Thomas, and I'll see you guys next time.